Hi guys, a question for you. Why is GB News afraid to criticise Suella Braverman? When it comes to people being put up in hotels, the blame is laid at the door of the asylum seekers themselves. When it comes to the low numbers of people being removed, the blame is laid at the door of so-called lefty lawyers. And when we talk about low numbers of applications being processed, who gets the blame? Home Office staff working from home. In this report, host Nana Akua blamed everyone but Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary. I wonder why.
The immigration industry. Well, that's what I like to call it because that's what it is. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've had enough. I'm sick and tired of hearing yet another ridiculous way to house migrants when the real problem is in the processing by a Home Office who are that in name because so many of them are actually working from their homes.
What's that got to do with processing claims? You'll notice a lot on GB News how they try to inject anti-lockdown rhetoric. During the pandemic, they were saying, we need to get people back to work, irrespective of, whether they're infected or not. Just get people back into the office, get people back working. We need to prioritize the economy over public health. And here we have it once again, blaming people working from home, on the lack of processing of asylum claims. No, there's a lack of staff, not the fact that people are working from home. And who is ultimately responsible for that? Suella Braverman. And the one before her, Priti Patel, and the ones before her as well. So this is a political choice not to invest the resources necessary to process claims. Spoiler, you're not going to hear Suella Braverman's name mentioned in this report whatsoever. It's always about blaming somebody else.
And we, the public, are paying for it. We're paying for all of it. Now, I'm not saying that we don't help people, but surely we can do better than this. The cost to house asylum seekers is on course to reach £11 billion a year. The Illegal Migration Bill, an unfortunate title. I mean, you think the so-called greatest minds this country has to offer would have perhaps renamed it. But then, nonetheless, the impact assessment from the bill warns that costs could exceed £30 million per day.
And once again, no calls for Suella Braverman to resign over this. She is ultimately responsible. Or if you want to go even further, the Prime Minister is ultimately responsible. But for this in particular, she is responsible. No calls for her to resign. No criticism of Suella Braverman whatsoever.
And this is why. So, the other day, we heard that Braintree District Council lost their High Court battle for MDP Wethersfield, that's the RAF base there, in James Cleverly's constituency, to be turned into a migrant camp, and that it will now house over 1,000 fighting-aged men. Now, it's not...
Fighting-aged men. Why do you think she injected this narrative here, this adjective, fighting-aged men? As if... Well, if you're a fighting age man. These are people claiming asylum. Now, some of them may be legitimate, some of them may not be. But you don't know until you actually process the claims. And why aren't the claims being processed? Because the Tories don't want to invest the resources necessary. Suella Braverman is not investing the resources. But once again, it's about moving the blame around. Oh, now it's these fighting age men. Why aren't they back in their country fighting? Not all asylum seekers are arriving from war-torn countries. Some people are arriving from situations where they would be tortured or killed if they remained there. It doesn't have to be a war. But once again, it's about presenting a false narrative.
Not clear as to whether they'll be allowed to leave the base, but either way, that is where they're going. Now, if you thought that was bad, well, get this. The Home Office are now outbidding councils for accommodation. So basically, they're offering private landlords a considerably higher rate of rent to house migrants than the councils can offer to house the people of this country. And it's leading to, as Kieran Williams, leader of Southwark Council, said of this homelessness staff, we have never seen anything like this. We have all but run out of options to find temporary accommodation in the borough. So instead of housing people who are already living in this country, we are prioritising those who have come here illegally and, in effect, exacerbating a homelessness pandemic.
Once again, no blame for... Who is responsible for that? You're criticising the Home Office for outbidding councils, which is a problem. But who are you blaming? well, the asylum seekers, they're the problem, not the Home Office who's actually doing this. Once again, no criticism of Suella Braverman, and I have to ask the question, why?
And the number of migrants being housed in private accommodation is now above 50,000, which is a 20-fold increase in less than 3 years. It's totally unsustainable. And if you thought about booking a nice hotel in a coastal town, you'll be lucky to find a room, as almost 400 are currently being used to house asylum seekers. That's 400 hotels. You couldn't make this up. Now, the illegal migration bill basically gives ministers the powers to detain and remove migrants who arrive here illegally, either to their home country or to Rwanda. And this week, the Court of Appeal will rule whether the Rwanda plan is lawful. Anyone proposing and opposing this needs to take a long, hard think and come up with some alternatives, because, frankly, I'm fed up of hearing liberal lefties talking about what a cruel place Rwanda is.
It's not liberal lefties that are complaining. It's the judges, the courts are saying maybe it's not a good idea, maybe it's not lawful to send people to Rwanda. Now, this is, as she said, we're going to hear the judgment this week. But why are you blaming people who are critical of the Rwanda policy? They don't have they're not part of the decision-making process. Like, criticizing something doesn't mean that you're able to stop it. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we were able to stop things that we don't like? No, we don't have that power. So it comes down to whether the judges agree with it or not. Once again, blaming other people. No mention of Suella Braverman. She's the one who made up, or Priti Patel and Suella Braverman are trying to, well, one came up with the policy and the other is supporting it, but no criticism of them for not thinking beforehand. Is this actually a policy that we can implement? Is this actually going to work? No criticism once again.
And how the rooms in a barge are too small, and how all migrants who come here are vulnerable when there are many who...
This is a straw man. Nobody said they're all vulnerable. It said, if people claim asylum, they have the right to have that asylum claim processed. And if they are rejected, then they are deported. I have yet to hear anyone say, no, people who are who've had their asylum claim rejected shouldn't be deported. Most reasonable people understand if your claim is rejected, you are deported. The vast majority of people who do claim asylum have that are successful in their claim.
Who are purely here for economic reasons and are bypassing those who come here legitimately.
What are you talking about, bypassing? There are no claims being processed. And bypassing. If people are arriving in the country and they're claiming asylum, they're not allowed to work. So they're not economic migrants. If there are people working in the black economy, that's different. Does she understand the difference between an economic migrant and an asylum seeker?
It's an industry, an immigration industry, a business where people smugglers and lawyers, employers...
But Suella Braverman wants to traffic people to Rwanda, irrespective of whether it's legal or not. She wants to do that. It's her dream. Now, who are you talking about when you're criticizing people smugglers? Is it the ones who bring people across the channel in ferry on dinghies, or is it about a Home Secretary who wants to send people to Rwanda, irrespective of whether it's legal or not?
Who want cheap labour, benefit, and those being exploited are the migrants themselves and the people of this country.
Once again, no actual solutions here, no criticism of Suella Braverman, of course, which begs the question, why? Now, can you imagine a different situation where the Home Secretary is a Labour MP, a Labour Home Secretary? Do you think GB News would be criticising the Home Secretary if the same situation is playing out? Of course they would. They would be calling for the Home Secretary to resign. And I can guarantee you now, you can take this clip and I can guarantee it won't age. When the Labour Party come into power and they're struggling to deal with the processing of claims or whatever, I can guarantee you GB News or outlets like GB News will be calling for the Home Secretary to resign, or they'll be at least calling for the Home Secretary to answer questions over this. There'll be massive criticism of the Labour government. Why aren't you processing the claims? Why aren't you investing the resources necessary? Why aren't you bringing down the numbers? And if you can't do it, then resign. Or if you can't do it, let's have another political party in power. But when it comes to Suella Braverman, for some reason, they won't criticise her. Does anyone know why? Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.